Hey, what's happening, people? How's everybody doing tonight? Tonight is a special Ultimate Selects for Yu-Gi-Oh! This is a game I've never played. I'm familiar with the concept of this game, but there was a NES game by the name of Kung Fu that was kind of similar to this, but I guess this is the first in that series. Karateka, I believe is how you say the name of the game.
Yeah, I believe it's called Karateka.
And
And
this came out in 1983, but I never owned it and I've never played it.
yep, and Yugioh, thank you so much, Yugioh, dude, for sponsoring today. You're breathtaking, Yugioh. Thank you so much. Yugioh says it is a reboot of an old school computer game I used to play in my grade school days. Kicking it old school. And Yugioh saying that this stream is this game is actually 40 years old, which is the same age as somebody here on this couch.
Okay, so how do we...
It's Link. Yeah, I'm excited.
How do we, where do we go? Death Bounce?
And I did read a lot of the thank you so much, Yugioh, for sending us an extensive list of some tips and some move sets from this. Okay, so some of this includes history from making the original game.
Okay, so we've got different variations
Karateka on
of
the
it.
Apple II, Karateka on the Commodore 64, Karateka on the Atari. So, and then Karateka Remastered, Reimagined, 2023. Interesting. And Death Bounce. So all kinds of oh wow, the floppy disk. Interesting. And thank you, Yu-Gi-Oh, for greatly helping out the channel. Appreciate that so much. I'm so excited to watch Luke look at this game. So which one should we look at? The first one from 1984, Yu-Gi-Oh?
He wants us to try the remastered first.
Okay, this one. Oh, the remastered one. Okay.
Okay. Nearly 40 years after its original release, Digital Eclipse presents an all-new version of Karateka. This updated edition includes recreations of features that were cut from the original due to time or technical reasons, as well as audio making of commentary. Okay. Here we go.
Kicking it old school, literally kicking it.
I like the opening text is like that of a 70s kung fu movie.
Yeah.
Oh.
Karateka.
Interesting.
I know kung fu.
He knows karate. High atop a craggy cliff guarded by an army of fierce warriors stands the fortress of the evil warlord, AKUMA. Deep in the darkest dungeon of the castle, AKUMA gloats over his lovely captive, the Princess Mariko. You are one trained in the way of karate, a karateka, alone and unarmed. You must defeat AKUMA and rescue the beautiful princess. But fear and self-concern behind you focus your will on your objective, accepting death as a possibility.
Oh my gosh.
Deep.
This is the way of Karateka. Oh wow, you're going right into it.
Whoops.
Wow, this was a Atari game? This is actually pretty good looking for... Oh wait, this is a remastered one.
I have died already.
You have died. You are dishonorable, Luke.
I was dishonorable?
You died first thing.
Oh.
Whoops. In the main menu, you can check out all the controls if you want to check them out, says Yugioh. Thank you, Yugioh.
I'll try again.
There are many strong warriors like him all over the world, says Blue's cat. First death, says everybody.
Oh, they show you the cutscene. Princess is going into jail.
Oh, he captured her. Poor princess. Mariko. Hopefully a strong warrior will help her. Wait, this is what happens when you die.
No. Wait,
oh,
really?
I think it's because you died. Now she's... No. Alright, now you have another chance. You have to save Mariko, Princess Mariko. Come on, strong warrior. You can do this. Alright.
I just fell off the cliff. Whoops.
Yep, thank you so much, Clayton, for the super chat. Thank you so much, Clayton.
I fell off a cliff.
Whoops, Luke.
Whoopsies. I atop a cliff. I am dead.
Really appreciate that, Clayton. Thank you. And thank you again, Yugioh, for sponsoring. Appreciate that so much, Yugioh. Thank you. Thank you for all your generosity today. Thank you, everyone. You can always go to the main menu if you want to check out the controls real quick, says Yugioh. And I did re-loop the controls also. I do like how the character model moves. You're in your little, what is that called? Gi or something? I don't know. Oh! How did you do that? Yeah, you want to be honorable and bow before Luke. Oh, watch out, watch out. I don't think you want to lower your eyes to an enemy, though. Whoa! He just punched you right in the face. Four-hit combo, let's go. Everybody was kung fu fighting. That's right, Frode B. Luke will be the dragon warrior, says Blue's cat.
Sweep the leg.
There you go, Luke, says Yugioh. Come on! Let's go, dragon warrior. Let's go. Yeah, we killed him. Let's go. Respectful victory. You respected him after you killed him.
Yeah, I killed him and just step over his body. I'm like, hey, how's it going?
I like how your stance is like, you're like always ready to go. You're like kind of crossing your leg behind you. Never lower your fist to an enemy. Oh, you've got them ready. You've got those fists ready.
Dude, it's taking forever to get to where I am. How far away did they make the poor guy?
Oh, here we go. It's on. Yes, yes. The stomach, again. Hajime, let's go.
And kick his leg, kick him in the shins.
Luke, that's not honorable. It's not the way of the warrior. Oh my gosh. Wow. At least you can give him a... Well, we didn't even get the bow.
Didn't even let me bow.
Wow.
Go now! Yes, master!
He sent somebody else after you.
I just gotta step over this guy's corpse very carefully.
No way, we are gonna save Princess Mariko.
Maybe.
We can save her.
This guy's having a tough time getting to where I am. I'm just walking.
That guy had too many donuts this morning. It's hard for him to run. Let's go for it. This would be kind of fun to play. This is so cool. So Yugi actually played this. Yugioh played this when he was younger, and honestly, this would be well. Actually, this is the remastered version, so I don't know what the original was like, but it's probably similar. But this would be really fun to play. I could see myself playing something like this when I'm younger or something, or when I was.
It didn't look like this back in the 80s. Not to this
Why does
extent.
this remind me of Ninja Gaiden, though?
No, it reminds me of a game called Kung Fu.
Oh.
It's a similar concept.
Manjo says, Master, I'm here to tell you to get him as you wish. Remember, press up to stand and glide the control upright to run. Okay, thank you, Yugioh. Okay, Clayton says, the guy who voiced Darkseid in Super Batman Apocalypse passed away today. And, he was the general in Fantastic Four Rise of Silver Surfer. Basically like a discount Nick Fury. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Clayton. That's terrible. We can all tell this game was by Jordan Mechner. Look at those triangles, says Macho. You can run while standing. You can run while standing, says Yugioh. You can see you guys can check out the Apple II version after this, says Yugioh. Alright, thank you, Yugioh. Really appreciate that. Thanks. Thanks so much. Get him! Hit him in the face! Get him! Yeah! We killed another one! Another one bites the dust. Yeah! Great job. Great job, sweetheart.
Where do these guys keep coming from?
Oh! He elbowed you in the face.
God, the time I finally learned to run, I run right into his elbow.
He just held it up there for you to run into it. He saw you running.
Death by
like,
elbow.
He set up a trap.
Oops. Music by Francis.
You can run. Yugioh Luke just learned how to run. Death number 10. Okay, death number 2. LOL, says Yugioh.
Lols.
Yep, Yugioh Luke ran into the guy's elbow. I think he put poison on the tip of his elbow.
Eat elbow, Westerner.
Yes. High atop a craggy cliff, guarded by the army of fierce warriors, stands the fortress of the evil warlord AKUMA. Deep in the darkest dungeon of the castle, AKUMA gloats over his lovely captive, the Princess Mariko. You are one trained in the way of Karateka. And... Whoa. Oh no, the princess.
No!
Wait, did anyone come and beat you up? It seemed like you were standing there alone.
I tripped over my footing again.
Wow, that was not honorable, Luke. You died without honor.
Whoopsies. I pulled a shredder.
That is not a warrior's death.
I took a dive right into the back of a garbage truck. Oh.
That was dishonorable.
For when you die, it will be without honor. Come on, dude. Walking to my feet.
Come on, warrior. Dude, let's go! Come at me, fools! Oh man, that guy's hardcore. He's hardcore. So Yugioh was telling me in the DMs that, you know, every level that you do, basically the warriors that you face are gonna get harder and harder. And there's lots of different moves you can do, different buttons for your kick and down kick, up kick, high kick, low kick, and all kinds of different things like that. And yep, so thank you so much, Yugioh, for all that really cool information. I did read it all to Luke. Yeah, he's doing the best he can with it at this point. He wasn't born a warrior, but he's learning. Some men are born warriors, some become them.
Amber, you're making me dizzy, honey.
Sorry about that. Okay, Yugioh says when try to watch your spacing when you see your opponent. Yep, we'll try not to run into their elbow next time, Yugioh. Thank you. Yep, watch your spacing, Brave Warrior. Try not to hit your face in his elbow. He's coming. Watch out, he might put his elbow in the air. Be careful. Well, you guys both have bare feet, basically. Oh, you probably have sandals. Or socks. Let's go! Come on, Luke, you can do it! Get him because his gi doesn't match. It's not all the same color. He's wearing an out of uniform thing. Oh. All right, you can do it. Oof.
Walk into this.
Alright, try having him run at you and put your elbow in the air.
Just want to kick him in the face.
Okay, try asking him to hold still so you can kick him in the face, Luke. Alright, it's the way of the warrior. Kicking in the face repeatedly. Let's go. I imagine his spiky helmet kind of hurt a little bit when you kicked him, but you know, it's completely fine. Feet of steel. Let's do this. You've got this, K-Wing. Yeah.
Smell my armpit.
Oh, we got another cutscene, basically. Great job, K-Wing. Good job, Luke.
Okay, 1 sec.
Alright, you can do it, K-Wing. Let's go. Alright, yes! A true warrior. Oh, look at that. You actually got points for a respectful victory. Alright, you're almost there, K-Wing. You've got this. Yeah, it's kind of nice that your opponents don't, like, try to run past you or run away. They just stand there and fight. I mean, that makes sense, though. Ooh, we're on a new environment. I think we're up on the roof. On a bridge, sorry. Yay, respectful victory. Awesome job. Great job, Luke. Yay, respectful victory. Awesome job. Uh-oh, watch out. All right. Oh, two guys down. Like around you. There was more guys before that. All right, you're almost to the dojo, or whatever that place is. The evil compound of that AKUMA guy. Okay. You can change a number of lives all the way to 11 if it becomes tough from the main menu. Thank you, Yugioh. Appreciate that so much. Thank you. You've got this as Dark Master. Thank you, Dark Master. Appreciate that so much. Alright, and nice job, K-Wing. Good job, Luke. Oh, they're playing harp music for her. That's very cute. Oh, wow, you're inside the complex now. Uh-oh. Shiny floors! Oh my gosh, I wonder if this was back on... I wonder if they had shiny floors on the Atari or... Okay, Luke said probably not. This is really cool they added that, though. Alright, come on. Great warrior Luke, you can do this. You didn't even bow, Luke. So disrespectful. Okay. Alright, Alright, I'll try to be back in a second. Luke is, up. He's a little bit away from the mic towards the TV, but he'll be back on the mic in a second, guys and gals. So, he's going dark for a little bit. Thank you again, Yugioh, for sponsoring your breathtaking. And, this is a really cool, thank you for sharing some of your childhood with us. Such a cool game, Yugioh. Thank you.
Yeah, and just heads up, guys. I have to be close to the TV because the sprite's too small for me to see. So that's why. Otherwise, I'm just gonna keep dying a lot because like I keep missing stuff. So sorry about that. Unless I mean, if I'm way back here, then I'm gonna die. So if you want good gameplay, I gotta go up front, just like racing games, pretty much. Just heads up. Act 2. I think we're doing pretty good. I don't know what act we're on, but this game's really interesting. Now there's a puzzle. Okay. Intro. Start. Probably 15-minute mark. First act. Act 2. Act 3. This is Act 3. Okay. Alright, I'll be right back, guys. I'm going to get something to drink. And thanks for watching. Hope you guys are enjoying Yu-Gi-Oh! Stream. It's a very interesting game. It still reminds me of Kung Fu. I don't know if people remember Kung Fu. Pow! Pow! No, cat, you don't get to have this. Amber, don't forget to take your stuff. Amber? Don't forget to take your BP.
I already took it.
Okay, you're good to go.
Good night.
Nice, sweetie. I'll put in. Whoa. Okay, Act 3. Run to the button, and the door goes down. Retreat to spring the button for 1 second, go forward, then run through the door like you did to avoid the dog. There was a dog? Ah! Oh my gosh! Yikes. Lives. Oh, you can have lives? Oh yeah, cool. Let's do 11 lives. What is that? Goals at 1. 5-hit combo, max combo, sudden death, no hit, victory. Okay, start game. Goals, Act 1. How many acts are there? Okay. Game over. Jump scare, yeah. Huh. I was not counting on that. Aye. Dun 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 dun. Sir, he's getting closer. Stop that fool. Yes, sir. Whoa! Da 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 da. Whoop 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 whoop. Hajime! Hoya! Kick! Kick! Low kick! Punch punch! Kick! High kick! Kick to face! Shin kick! Shin kick! Face punch! Face punch! Kick! No bow for you. Goodbye! No. Walk into my fist of fury. Shin kick. Shin kick. Oh. My personal space. Eat elbow. Goodbye. Ah! Whoa! Clone jutsu! Ouch! That's what I get for bowing. I'm here to kick your butt. Ouch! Who wants to get kicked in the shins? Ah, face punch. I'm coming after you! Stupid bird. Run, 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 run. What? That bird means business. What is it like? Um... Out of my way, bird. Whoa. Kick in the face. Oops. Beat it, bird! Bird! Ouch! Walk into this. Huh? Ugh! Whoa. Hi, Aqua Dolphin. Oh no, I don't like this one. This is the return of the cat. The cat likes to eat me. That gate is the bane of your childhood. That gate couldn't make up in its mind what it wanted to do. That gate was like, would you like to pass through? No, we're gonna come down and crush you. Exactly. Alright, here we go. Gosh! I'm being eaten. Someone's being eaten. I don't understand what I was supposed to do. Am I not supposed to move very quickly? Whoa! Ha! Goodbye. What? Ah! What is happening right now? High kick to the face. High kick to... Ow. Punch! Why do you keep smacking in my fist, guy? Ha! He bows at the door. Why? Oh gosh. Ow. Lol. Walk into the foot. High foot to face, come on. Face to foot style, how do you like it? Ow. I rock. All day, sweet Susie. Goodbye. No hit encounter! 12 hits. Whoa. Ouch! Oh my gosh, what's going on? Ah! Bird! Help! Ow! Uh-oh. Ah! My gosh. What is happening right now? There we go, now I can see. Let's go, bozo! Okay, 58. AKUMA boss. Final boss! Let's go. Ah! Ah! What is happening right now? Run at her? You killed me twice! And so, this adventure ends. The evil AKUMA lies vanquished. The beautiful Mariko safe in your arms for the first time in memory. The village basks in the sunlight of peace. But beware, for the true Karateka, there is only a next time. Why did she kill me 3 times? What is love, baby? Don't hurt me. Don't kick me no more. What is love? Do 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 do. She kicked him in the face like 3 times. Insta kill. Final boss, nothing. Watch out for that girl. Oh my gosh. I don't know if that girl's a keeper. I think you want to run away from her. Alright, I'd like to play with commentary if you guys are cool with it. Commentary on. Alright, here we go. Okay, so where's the commentary?
Hello, I'm Mike Micah, president of Digital Eclipse, and I'm here to talk about the remastering of Karateka.
He's gonna interrupt the game.
How do you pronounce the game? That's the fun part of this whole thing, and one of the fun parts for me going into this was listening to how everybody pronounces the game that I work with. I pronounce it, and I've always pronounced it, and you're going to hear me say this all the time, is Karateka. But then I've heard people say Karateka, Karateka, and Karateka in other ways. But Karateka is the way I've said it, and I think I've run into more people who say it like I do than any other way. But honestly, ultimately, it's up to Jordan, and Jordan pronounces it, and I might get this wrong, but he pronounces it Karateka. Karateka is one of my favorite games of all time. I've even tried to port the game probably 33 years ago now, I think, when I was still in high school, to the Commodore Amiga. So for me, it was a lot of unfinished business. I wanted to get back to porting Karateka. And approaching this project, one of the things that kind of excited me and interested me most was why, outside of the holy trinity of versions of Karateka, did all the other ports just suck? And I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that people didn't really understand it or didn't have the source code, or they were just in a completely different frame of mind for this sort of game. Without specifically calling out certain platforms and certain games, what really kind of stood out to me is that people who tried to port Karateka previously approached it in a way that was very common back in the day. Very simple gameplay, very state-driven, the antithesis of cinematic, which is kind of the purpose of Karateka. It's meant to be a movie you play. And their approach was to take a game and make it feel more arcadey and feel very immediate. And as a result, it was just very unnatural and very, very hard to play. Karateka is one of my favorite games of all time. The gate was just to literally scroll it very quickly. But it was also a really iconic moment in the game, because when you arrive at the castle, you meet the guard and there's the gate, and that's just like every screenshot of the old Karateka game is pretty much that. And because Jordan wanted to make it parallax, there's some interesting challenges here, because I wanted to draw the gate like he would draw it on the Apple II. So I actually do line draws like you would on an Apple II. So that gate is not a 3D object. It's actually using the same kind of routines that Jordan used, but to draw it in that parallaxing way. So I wanted to approach it the same way that Choplifter and Jordan intended to draw that gate, being parallax in 3D. So it's not a 3D object, but the other thing that came out of it was the gate served as a sort of break in the gameplay of the original game, so it could show a cutscene. He mainly did that because he needed to load data into the game, and so it was a clever way to get data to load back and forth and use that break to take advantage of that. Since we didn't have that anymore, it seemed really odd to be going through this 3D gate and then have it stop and go to a cutscene. It just didn't fit anymore. So going back over the game and reading through the journals again, there was some more stuff he wanted to do cinematically with the game. Particularly, I believe, whether in conversation or in his book, he talked about having the guard start running toward AKUMA to go tell him, and you see that. So this is an opportunity to have that happen. So when you get past the gate and you encounter the next player or the next enemy, when you take down that enemy, that's when the cutscene triggers, and you see the other one guard going the opposite direction to go run up to tell AKUMA that somebody's arrived, and so I was able to capture that moment too. The gate was just a large graphic on the Apple II, and it was just impossible to move it around. You couldn't really scroll it very quickly, but it was also a really iconic. The gate was just a large graphic on the Apple. If I approach this as it being just a modern PC remaster, that's already been done. There was already another Karateka that was kind of a modern take on Karateka. My fascination sat with the idea that I wanted to figure out what the obstacles were to people who were porting the game and try to understand why that was so challenging. Because I think when you first look at Karateka, on its surface, you're like, all right, one-on-one combat, very simple mechanics, that should be easy to do. But it really isn't. And when you start digging into Jordan's code, you start to realize he had created basically the perfect clockwork version of a fighting game that was very cinematic, but on top of that, he had spent a couple years really optimizing everything to just work perfectly. If you just move one byte this way or one byte that way, the game breaks. And it was like the ultimate optimization. For me, to approach this then and try to port it, it's easy to do a port to a modern system because you can do anything you want. It's beyond the scope or the realm of anything else that you would need to worry about. There's no limitations, so you don't have to optimize. So in my mind, I wanted to go back and kind of approach it in the way that the team that ported Prince of Persia, Jordan's other game, did to the PC, the VGA PC. That was a version, if you look at the Apple II version, you look at the PC version, they're very different, and they play great, but the PC version is like this. It's a system that had so much more power, yet showed restraint and kind of worked within the limitations of what the original platform was so that it retained the feel and look of that original game. So for me, I created basically a fantasy platform. I created was essentially like a VGA PC or an Amiga, very similar to the machine I originally tried to port this game to many years ago. I approached it like that. So I created my own system with its own limitations so that I had a target platform that I could take the original game and try to make it work on. And from that, I was hoping I would find all these obstacles that everybody else ran into.
Interesting. Tech power of limitations.
The approach to the animation in the newer version of Karateka had to be very delicately handled because we did not want to remove or change any of the keyframes of the original game. By doing that, it suddenly wasn't Karateka anymore. It really had to be his father, and everything else that he rotoscoped had to stay retained in there. So what we had to do then was to make sure that those were retained, but everything in between had to be an interpolation. And we could have just used AI, we could have used any other ways to generate that animation, but it just didn't look natural. So the best approach was literally going in by hand and figuring out the weight and the distance and the travel of every bit of motion and look at those frames back and forth until you could figure out a trajectory for the in-between frames and just by hand draw those frames in. And
Wow.
thankfully, the game doesn't have a lot of color. Even the new version doesn't have a lot of color. So that reduced the amount of work. You can hide a lot of detail in the white of his gi. And the other costumes in the game have a lot of solid color space. So you can hide a lot of movement there and insinuate movement without doing much. So it really just kind of worked out.
Interesting. Oops. Punch him in the face. Kick him in the face. Sir, he's coming! Go out there and kill him! Yes, sir! Aye!
There were a lot of things in the original Karateka that worked so wonderfully around the limitations of the Apple II. Like, Jordan would draw very large objects. And when those objects were being drawn, he wouldn't move the screen because he knew that to redraw those objects across the screen would bring the frame rate down to an extreme crawl. So he worked really well around those limitations. And I wanted to do the same thing. I wanted to have a limit of how many things I could draw, which would force me not to go overboard on everything. It doesn't mean that I didn't add flourishes or anything like that in there. There were a lot of things in his notes that he wanted to do on the original Apple version that were left on the cutting room floor because of these reasons. Like, one of those things was the main gate. So I want to make sure that this platform I was creating from scratch could at least accomplish things like that. But it was more or less a platform that was going to cover just enough and improve the limitations just enough so that some of those things that Jordan wanted to put in the game originally could be done, but not more than that. I kind of wanted it to be kind of like perfectly in that sweet spot.
Music and soundtrack. Do 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 do. But yeah. Why do I lift my pit up like, smell my pit? Why does it keep running past my corpse?
One of the other options we added to the game was scan lines because we created this fictional platform that's kind of like a PC VGA quality platform, and there's this raw pixel mode, but I also wanted it to feel like you're playing a vintage style platform from maybe like the 80s into the 90s, that this like extra version of Karateka is being ported to the system. And to do that, I want to make sure it felt like it was on a display. So we've added a scanline mode as well here, like we do in the other versions of the game, just to make it feel more connected to those older versions, but also in era, which I think is it's the way I prefer to play, because it feels like I'm playing on something more tangible, more like a real system. Even though a modern system's real, I want something that feels like real from like the 80s. I also wanted it to feel like you're playing a vintage style platform from maybe like the 80s into the 90s, that this like extra version of Karateka is being ported to the system. And to do that, I want to make sure it felt like it was on a display. So we've added a scanline mode as well here, like we do in the other versions of the game, just to make it feel more connected to those older versions, but also in era, which I think is the way I prefer. One of the things we also noticed is in the various versions of Karateka, and in particular, one of the versions
Happy
of Commodore
birthday!
64 that Veda was working on, at some point there was this alternate soundtrack. There's kind of like a rhythmic, musical thing that goes on during gameplay. That was kind of interesting because most of the game is quiet. And a lot of the reason for that is because the Apple II had a single speaker, and you had one byte that you can change, and it would tell the speaker to like move in or out, and you had to like generate tones by literally making the speaker move. And that's why the sound takes over the gameplay, so there's no movement when sound's playing and all these sorts of things. And so sound was always kind of, while the music is amazing and it's just brilliantly composed, the ability to play that music has been very challenged in all these versions of Karateka, and it just squeaked by with enough of it. But most of the game is very quiet. And so when there's a lot of action, it feels weird now in the modern sense to watch a lot of action on screen but have it be silent, or have like little hits and pops. And so part of the remaster was to go in there and also add music for combat sequences to help heighten the anxiety of the player, to make it feel a little bit more important. But we didn't want to do it in such a way that was going to be competitive to or try to live up to what Francis Mechner had created for Karateka. So we're going with something, again, inspired by the Commodore 64 iterative version of the game that's a little more percussive, and ways to try and kind of like not clash with the music that was composed for the game, or to not give us an opportunity to recompose stuff because we shouldn't. So that's just used to help heighten the anxiety during fights, and to add to the feel of the game so it doesn't feel so quiet in certain parts. And then ultimately too, the music that we have in the remaster comes from all versions of Karateka, because each version had something different, and all the music was composed by Francis, so I want to make sure that we had a complete soundscape that came from his compositions.
Fascinating.
One of the things we also noticed is in the various versions of Karateka, and in particular one of the versions of the Commodore 64 that Veda was working on, at some point there was this alternate soundtrack. There's kind of like a rhythmic, musical thing that goes on during gameplay. That was kind of interesting because most of the game is quiet. And a lot of the reason for that is because the Apple II had a single speaker.
Why do you keep running over my corpse?
One of the things we've said for years internally here at Digital Eclipse was that when we approached doing remasters, we really wanted to make the game you remember, not necessarily the game that it actually is. Because a lot of older games, when you play them today, they're not. You almost spoil the memory you have of that game, because it was a different time, and there weren't advances in controllers and all these other things that you got really good. Again, you got really good at a certain kind of interface, and those games were a lot easier to play back then. But now, this approach, really, like with the Karateka remaster in particular, the idea was to make that game you remembered in your head, not necessarily the game it was, because there were frame rate slowdown and all this other kind of stuff, the issues that were kind of going on in that original game. This was going to run at a consistent frame rate, and it was going to have the ability for you to react in certain ways. And because the game is faster, it actually makes it more difficult. So I had to extend the windows of anticipation and all these things, and the AI had to kind of tune down the AI a little bit, because the game, when it's running at a faster clip, the AI is making decisions faster than you are. And initially, when I kind of ported everything over, the AI would just crush you instantly. They just kind of come up and just take you down all the time. So I had to really expand on the speed and the AI decision-making windows to make it a little bit easier for the player. So from day one, the idea was to make it a little bit more accessible, to feel a little more natural, to feel a little bit more modern, and hopefully that would make it a lot easier for people.
Wow, learning a lot about early game design.
One thing about what Jordan had done with the game in that cinematic approach is that he applied cinematic techniques, like with very cinematic wipes and other ways to present scenes, And in his journals, he talked about his love of cinema and all the things that come with that and the approach to movie making. It mimicked a lot of what I had gone through in film school for myself. And one of the things that kind of stood out to me was the idea that you have this emotion as the story transpires, and you kind of put color to that. So you have like a color palette, and a lot of movies like blues represent calm and reds represent conflict and everything else. So I wanted to approach this the same way because I wanted to extend what Jordan was doing cinematically. So why don't we apply some of these cinematic approaches? So the game starts off with a very bright palette, and it has cherry blossoms blowing in the wind and everything, and it just seems kind of like a nice setting. But the further you go through the first level, the sky starts to darken, things start to get more foreboding, and it's just this old cinematic trick being applied to Karateka. One thing about what Jordan had done with the game. One thing about what Jordan had done with the game. One thing about
Gosh, please stop. No.
In many ways, Jordan, at an early age, was obviously a genius because his approach to the AI in Karateka is super simple and elegant, but it came from something much more complicated. What he wanted it to do, he achieved, and he did it really well, but it was the reduction of that logic is where the genius was. He reduced that logic to very simple states that were complex systems that play out, but it doesn't feel, when you're playing the game, it doesn't feel like you're just playing against a very rote state-based system. It feels very natural. And when you look at that and you say, okay, let's go ahead and transcribe that. Let's refactor that AI into something that's running at a higher frame rate. And all it should be is, let's take that, transcribe it, and then run that logic at a slower rate so it can match up with kind of what the original game did, but then feed the new actors in the game the information of what to do. That was the first step, and it failed miserably. It was awful. So then I had to go in and approach it with let's understand what he's doing, and let me try to unwrap and unravel his very tight code to see what it probably looked like beforehand. And getting that to unravel became another challenge because it was really hard to reverse that and go back to an original state that Jordan had when he was first putting the AI together. And even though I thought I was getting it right, it was still not performing the way the original game performed. So then I just basically took the logic that was in the original game and took it at the high level of what every player could do, looked at what the code, the disassembly we had made, looked at what that code did, and I tried to just create another state machine that wanted to do the same things at the same time for the same reasons, and then do a more modern approach to AI playing it out. And that was the best approach, and that's the approach that's in the game today, but it still didn't get as tight and as good as what Jordan had done in the original Karateka. So in many areas where we've kind of improved things or just made things feel a bit more modern, I still feel even now the AI in the attempt to port this game is probably the weakest part of the game. And that really has to do with how good the original game was and how much Jordan had put into the thought process for how the AI would play out, and just trying to recreate that and refactor that in a modern sense just proved like basically you couldn't pull it off.
Cool.
I still remember when I first played Karateka. I went to this store called Micro World Computer Center, and they had it for rent. And I didn't know what it was. It was new, so I asked them to bring the box down. I looked at it. I just couldn't believe what I was looking at. It just looked too good to be true. So I rented it, and then I rented it for like the next. I think you had it for a week every time you rented it. I rented it for like the next 6 weeks. And so much so that when I finally brought it back the next time I said I wanted to rent it again, the guy there was like, hey, guess what? Like, you've rented this so much, you basically bought it. You can have it if you want it. And I'm like, yes. And so I brought this game home, and I had already beaten it so many times. All my friends have beaten it so many times. But what we were doing is we created these goals for ourselves. We're like, okay, let's see if we can get through the game without getting hit once. Can you get through the game and with every character you encounter, can you kick them under the belt? Can you do all these things? Like, all these little nuances that we just appreciated about the game became goals to us, and everybody's like striving to be able to do it first. And so in this remaster, I really wanted to capture kind of what people like myself, and I've run into so many other people who did the same thing, and they do this. A lot of people do this with all kinds of games. And at this point, I was like, why don't we just recognize this stuff? So I asked a bunch of people who had played Karateka a lot, like, what do they mentally keep track of when they were playing the game? If they've already beaten it several times, what was the thing they always like to do? And that became our goal list. So you basically have in the game a list of goals, and when you achieve these goals during gameplay, you'll see a little alert come up and tell you you've done it. And then you can go into this basically the goal chart or little checklist and see all the things you've accomplished. It was just an extra layer to the game for when you've beaten the game. It gave you something else extra to do. And for us back then, that was extended the life of the game, and now we're just memorializing it.
Oh shoot, did I die? Nope, we're okay. Yeah, I love the little commentary thing, because it's kind of interesting. Dude's running past my corpse. Ow!
Well, the bird in Karateka, that's a whole other thing. So the bird is really important to what the story is. It's really important to the pacing of the game. It breaks up the monotony of the enemies, and it really makes it feel like you're progressing through the game. It was a great add. Whether the bird is an eagle, a vulture, or whatever, I don't think anybody knows. I don't even know if Jordan really knows. I think it just changed along in production. But ultimately, it was one of the more challenging parts of the entire game. But it also played a role in the copy protection of the game as well. So many people who have horrible memories of the bird only have those horrible memories of the bird because the bird became substantially harder if you copied the game. And it was the thing designed to kill you so you couldn't beat the game because it knew that you made a copy of the game. It's ruthless. And I bet probably 80% of the people who have this game right now who are listening to me are like, wait a minute, maybe that's why the bird was so hard. And it probably was, because you copied it, you pirate.
Interesting. Why is my body there?
The bird is another thing that really helps slow down the pace of the game, because at some point you start to get really good at the enemies, and the bird suddenly appears. Now it's like chess. It has this compound effect of movements and things you have to kind of deal with. And so you encounter the bird 2 times. You encounter it when you're in level 2.
Yep, I heard about the death of E3.
You hear
I figured it was coming.
coming up, and if you keep running, the bird hits you.
They
and
kept
die.
canceling it every year.
Which is another part of the Karateka.
Digital
lore,
put them
which
out of
is just,
business.
You know, if you run into anything, you're gonna die. Surprised you can't just die by running into a door. But like everything else you run into, you just die. So like the bird is designed for that. So it kind of tricks you. So that's one of the first tricks Karateka throws at you is like you're running, you think you're gonna encounter this other guy because you got used to in the first act running and encountering a guy and stopping and fighting. So you hear the alert and you're like, okay, here comes this guy, and I'm gonna run up till I see him, and a bird comes out and just kills you instantly. That's what it does. And that's kind of the layers that Karateka has throughout the game. You get challenged like that again and again because Jordan would play with what you think you know, and then do the opposite of that.
In a way, Nintendo killed E3 because when they started doing their Nintendo Directs in I think they started it 10 years ago. I think 2013 was one of the first years they did it.
During the production, I took a break working on the port for a little while because the rest of the product still had to come together, and we still had to put a bunch of stuff in as far as like all the artifacts and everything that are in the project. So I was away from the code for a while, and I came back and saw the game.
Oh my gosh!
Basically fresh eyes, and also other people started to play it again too, and I could hear through my walls the frustration people had with how many times they were dying playing the game. And one of the suggestions that had come from Chris Kohler, the editorial director on the project, was that he wanted to have multiple lives in the game because having one single life is just unbearable these days. While I personally disagree, I valued the feedback and really understood that, like, objectively, yes, we need to do that. So one of the things I did was immediately allow you to increase the number of lives you have during the game. And one of the suggestions that Chris had made was when you die, you should leave the player's body there and then spawn a little further back, and you can just basically pile up your bodies if you want. And I thought that was hilarious. And so I implemented that, and it did change the feel of the game in a way that was much more positive, I think, for modern game players, and gives you a chance to actually beat the game. And it does give you a chance to. I didn't penalize you so harshly like the original game, where if you get to the end and you don't run into Mariko's arms, she'll just kick you, and you die. Now you can die, and then you spawn again and be like, okay, I'm going to run into her arms this time.
Yeah, E3 was dying for a long time, though. Like, the first Nintendo Direct was June of 2011. So that was a year before the Wii U came out. And then basically what happened is more and more companies took Nintendo's idea of a digital thing and learned Nintendo was saving all this money. So then you had Sony follow with their PlayStation State of Play, then you had Xbox, and then there was really no reasons for these giant presentations at E3. You were saving millions and millions of dollars as a company. So E3 just became kind of this outdated concept.
When you start getting further into the game, we really explored more of the cinematic lighting and color palette. The goal here was when you go through the second act and you're on the inside of the castle, lighting's coming down, it's at sunset. We have reflections that are literally just sprites inverted and half-drawn color, and doing all the same kind of tricks that you would do on an old platform, but just trying to achieve, in our minds, if this were Jordan and you had this platform with this much power, how far could you push it visually using the old tricks? And that's what we were trying to do.
Yeah, so Nintendo was very smart, and also they did it because they were trying to take the press's power away from them, because the press was always making fun of Nintendo systems. And, like, you know, so Nintendo was like, well, we're going to release the news our own way, and that way it won't have, like, a negative spin to it. We can also kind of use it as a way to talk directly to our consumers, instead of, like, having a third party go through us as, like, you know, a group that's going to highlight our games. So, I mean, Nintendo was a trailblazer. It was a brilliant idea. And Nintendo Directs exists to this day, but, you know, if it wasn't for Nintendo Directs, E3 would probably still be around, but, you know, E3 was already kind of like death spiraling before the pandemic hit. Once the pandemic hit, that was kind of like the final nail in the coffin. Like, it was already kind of slowly dying. Like, it was terminal. But E3, when COVID happened, that was it. They never recovered from that. They lost... Because you have to remember that in 2020... they had already paid for the event, and they had to cancel it. Like, the event was already paid for that year. So, like, they had to eat that cost of tens of millions of dollars, maybe more. And then I think they planned on doing it in 2021, and they had to cancel again. So then, you know, it's just, it became like this money pit for them. Ow. Why? California is going to be in big trouble, though, because E3 was a big revenue stream for them. They made a lot of money. Hotel prices skyrocketed. It was very good for the California economy since the 90s. And now that's over. Did you know a lot of game developers actually moved to California because it was closer to be there for E3 and GDC? Now that E3 is out of the equation, you're probably going to see a lot of like software companies like leave California because it's too expensive to be in California. They don't actually, you know, they don't really need to be there anymore. There's no reason. So I, like, in the next like 3 or 4 years, I see a lot of companies leaving California. I don't see, you know, a reason for them to stick around. The whole reason for, like, everybody migrating down there and having their company and whatever was to make E3 and some other conventions be easier, and now that's not really a thing anymore. So, a lot of changes are going to happen, probably.
Well known for its ending being kind of brutal and that you can just die instantly.
Yes, PAX is still around.
Sort of learn a little bit of Jordan's thinking in this with the gate. The gate in Section 2 is one of those things I think also, I don't think there's anybody who didn't die from that first and then understand what you have to do after that. And again, that was one of the hardest parts of the game because you have to time your walk through the gate. And I remember on the Commodore 64 version having so much trouble lining my character up just enough so I could kick and get the foot under the gate so the gate drops, but you won't die if your foot's under the gate. And then waiting for the gate to be just about at head height and then walk through. Every time I tried to run through, I'd always die because like it took too long for me to stand up and then run and die. So my trick that I always use is to put my leg into the gate so it's partially under the gate, and once once you kick, it triggers the gate and it drops. And then wait for the gate to go up, and just before it gets above your head, walk through the gate. And that should work every time.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's really no point to be in California anymore, like for a game studio, because, I mean, the whole reason for there is no longer there. So, I mean, they can save a lot of money by going to a place that's cheaper where they can still work on their games. They'll save money, and they'll also be a lot happier because, I mean, no offense to California, but California is a very volatile place. It's a very toxic place to live. Whoop. So, I mean, if you don't have to be there for your job, then, I mean, I would just go somewhere else. Dun, 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 dun. What actor we are on? We're on the killer dog now, right? I want to hear about this. Yeah, the killer dog. All right, here we go. Oh yeah, well I have friends who they're press in California, and they tell me, like, in LA you got to step over the homeless people. You also have to be careful where you step because there's human feces all over the place. It's like, basically, like, I think the thing that I would worry the most about being in California is, like, you know how the bubonic plague started, right? It had to do with people being unclean and rats and diseases mixing together, you know? Like people's hygiene problems and, you know, human excrement, all that other stuff. These places with this massive homeless population where they're not cleaning up, you know, it's going to create a widespread disease again. You know that old saying, you know, you need to learn from history or else you're doomed to repeat it. It's like California and some of these other places, they're very close to creating another bubonic plague. Which is disturbing. Do they care? No. Because, I mean, that stuff didn't go away. We don't really have a cure for that, you know? People think we do because it happened, you know, thousands and thousands of years ago, but we don't really have a surefire cure for that. Because it has to do with bacteria, E. coli, and stuff like that. And we don't have a cure for that 100%. The cure for E. coli is to wash your hands and to, you know, take care of your hygiene. It gets inside your body, it'll mess you up. The long-lost encounter.
One of the more exciting aspects of working on this port of Karateka was the idea that we could go back and finish what the team originally intended to do with the leopard. And the leopard is it's an animation we found on one of the discs that Jordan had. I think it was created by Lauren Elliott, and there was enough animation to get a sense that the leopard could run, jump, and sit, and there's just enough there to kind of derive a little move set. But outside of that, everybody we talked to had a different perception of what the leopard was supposed to do. From Jordan to everybody
Oh, it's a
else.
leopard?
I think everybody back in the day had an idea of what they wanted
I thought
to do.
it was like a panther
None of them
or
agreed
something.
on it, and that's ultimately probably what happened to the leopard not being in the game outside of time. And I know Veda really wanted to incorporate it. She was really into the idea of putting it into the game. So the best notes we got were the notes we got from Veda and what was in Jordan's journal. And from there, it was more or less, let's try to conceive of what Jordan likely would have wanted to do. And the way to do that was to take his next game, Prince of Persia, and take Karateka. If there was any other mechanics that were going to show up in Karateka, they'd probably be somewhere in between those two games, mechanically speaking. So what we took then from Prince of Persia was the pressure plate concept. We kept the gate that was in the first, or the second section of Karateka, and the idea that the gate now could be dropped by the pressure plate and make that sort of a puzzle. And what you're doing is you're trying to work out this puzzle to keep the leopard away from you long enough that it has to go around and come get you. And when that's happening, you need to sneak through the gate as quick as possible. And that's the puzzle. And that was as simple as we wanted to be, because if we went any more complicated, we would really be changing the gameplay. And it also fit that checkbox of like whatever new thing you're going to add to Karateka has to just kill you instantly pretty much, and then you learn from that. And so this was another similar approach to Jordan's theory of game design at this point, and we kind of put it in there. It's really just
Not yet, Jake,
it's
but
really meant
they
to be
could,
a curiosity
because they're not very clean.
maybe fantasize what it would be like to have that scene back in Karateka. It's more or less for people who were on the team as well as for ourselves, because when you see that sprite artwork, you really want to know what that was going to be like in the game. And while we created and invented what that could be, it still kind of scratches that itch of what could have been.
You have to find a way of... Ah! Uh-oh. Open gate. My gosh, how am I going to get in? It's trolling me too much. What in the world? How am I supposed to get past? I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. Ouch! Haha! Okay, I got through. Okay. Yeah, I'm saying that, Jake, if they don't take care of their stuff, you can't, as a civilized society, especially, America's supposed to be a place that is a shining beacon of hope and prosperity. It's not supposed to be a land full of crime and decadence and, like, disgusting stuff. And it's certainly a city that literally has human excrement all over the place. It's bad. Not only does it look disgusting, but also it will spread disease. It's just a matter of time. I mean, history repeats if you don't find ways of correcting it. Like, over the centuries, our society has developed ways of dealing with human waste. You know, in a safe manner, more or less. Well, I mean, mostly safe. You know, having it go underground and getting rid of it, like, through waterways and all kinds of stuff. Like, just having it rotting in the streets, I mean, there's all kinds of things that's going to do. It'll attract flies, rodents, all kinds of things. And they don't have a sanitation company that's cleaning that stuff up either. They're just letting... They have an abundance of homeless people, and they have no way to do anything about it. You know? And there's more and more of these homeless camps that are popping up in parts of California, too. Which is incredibly dangerous. So eventually, if they don't do something about it, yes, then they will create the plague. Again. And then that'll spread to different places in the U.S. Just like it did all throughout Europe. It's not healthy. And they say, oh, it's not a problem. It's like, oh, it's a big problem. They just don't want to deal with it. Commentary 4. All right, let's go.
The variables that are at play behind the scenes in the game that increase the AI's difficulty as you go through the game are pretty simple. It's more or less the speed in which they can do their moves. It's also the reaction time. So they're reacting to what you do, and there's a window of reaction time that can...
I don't remember how I got on that subject. It's 1 in the morning.
So as you go through the game, that window gets smaller and smaller. And the other part, the other aspect of it too, is defense. The AI will early on.
Yeah, E3's over.
Kind of move in on you a lot more. Later in the game, the AI will retreat a bit more and think up new tactics to approach the player. So ultimately, the further you go in, those variables keep increasing or decreasing to increase that difficulty, and ultimately, the accumulation of all that stuff is the accumulation of it is AKUMA. And so when you encounter AKUMA is at the maximum difficulty in many ways. And also, to make AKUMA work, I kind of borrowed what the original game did, which is remove certain attacks. Because AKUMA will only do a certain kind of punch and only certain kicks. And if those were put back into the game, AKUMA just destroys you instantly.
No, go away.
All right. The variables that are at play behind the scenes in the game that increase the AI's difficulty as you go through the game are pretty simple. It's more or less the speed in which they can do their moves. It's also the reaction time. So they're reacting to what you do, and there's a window of reaction time that can shrink and expand as necessary. And so as you go through the game, that window gets smaller and smaller. And the other part, the other aspect of it too, is defense. The AI will early on be less defensive, kind of move in on you a lot more. Later in the game, the AI will retreat a bit more and think up new tactics to approach the player. So ultimately, the further you go in, those variables keep
Ow. Almost got this guy. Da 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 da. Are they gonna tell us about the girl at all? Like in this commentary? Or no one knows why the girl kills you? Graphics, the torches. The torches remind me of the Prince of Persia game.
The torches were torches that were conceptually stolen from Prince of Persia. Like, we loved the way those torches looked in that game, so we thought that would be something Jordan would have been able to do and wanted to potentially do. But all of this to enhance the cinematic feel of the game, because it's sort of like our own version of Heart of Darkness. The further you go into this story, the darker it gets, and then ultimately, when you get to the end of it, in the moonlight, have the story resolve.
No, I don't think that. I really believe the game industry is going to leave California. There's no reason for them to stay. Their argument could be, oh, we're closer to Japan by flight, but most companies don't even get invited to go to Tokyo Game Show anyway.
Different from the rest of the guards. And ultimately, I think what he ended up doing was creating about 5 guards that were reused throughout the game. And then once you get into the dungeon, there's a couple helmet variations that are used there that kind of represent that differentiation of the guards. Currently in the game, we have the same number of helmets, but I think this is the best part about doing this commentary right now is we're still in production. I think the plan is now that we're going to change because the guards essentially in the original game on Apple II were always blue, and all the other versions they had skin tone. So we kind of split the difference. So outside of the dungeon, they have skin tone, and in the dungeon, they're blue. So it's just kind of like they never see daylight or whatever. So what we're going to do is go a little bit further and give them unique helmets in the dungeon is the plan. If we don't get to that, it's because we ran out of time. But if we do get to that, it's because we're planning on it and we had time. But that's the plan right now, is to make sure that the dungeon guards feel a little bit, actually they'll feel a little bit more like the Apple II guards, which I think is a nice touch, because the further you go into the game, the more it kind of throws back to the original game, which would be really fun.
If I'm really thinking about it, I think that a lot of game developers are either going to move to probably Texas, Atlanta, because there's a lot of them in Atlanta, and probably Nashville. Maybe some in Florida. There are some game developers in Florida. But New York City's too expensive. Boston's too expensive. Chicago's too dangerous. Maybe Jersey. There's a couple game developers in Jersey. But don't know.
Probably one of the best examples of that sort of accumulated skill that you have in a visceral sense. The visceral skill that you use in a game. Because there's not... If you think about it, you're moving from left to right. You're doing one encounter at a time. You're not loading out guns and like advancing the gun and adding mods to it or anything like that. It's just you and your skill set against a horde of enemies between you and Mariko. And you have to learn how to time each punch, each kick, and you anticipate things and you do all stuff. It brings it down to a level that's far more visceral than a lot of modern games do. And that's what I love about Karateka, because it is a skill-based game. It is something that is punishing at first, but once you understand the flow and how the AI interprets what your actions are and how you can interpret the AI's actions and defend against those, it's a really, really rewarding experience. And by adding lives to the game, it was a compromise that I wanted to make, because I think a lot of people will walk away from the game before they have the time to learn or invest the time to learn and how to actually play it.
Yeah, because I'll just pause real quick. Summer Game Fest and the Video Game Awards. They don't need a lot of people to operate that, and also it's a lot less expensive than E3 was. Like, literally E3, I don't know if you guys know this, but for a game developer, like a big AAA developer, to have a booth, it was like $10 million. depending on the size of the developer, if it was like Nintendo or if it was like Xbox, the bigger the booth, the more expensive it was because you'd be paying for the space for a whole week, plus the week to set it up prior, depending on how big your booth was. Warner Brothers booth when we went there in 2013 was like the size of I would say, how do I put this in? Half a basketball court, like about half the size of a basketball court, like a professional NBA basketball court. They had a big display. They had these towering city things in the background. They had tons of. This was for Arkham Origins, by the way. So they had all this stuff for Arkham Origins and Blackgate, and then on the other side was Warner Brothers Injustice, which was being showcased there as well. So I mean, it was a massive spread. It was really cool looking. It had smoke and had buildings and had like the bat symbol and bat signal, all kinds of stuff. Plus, you had like little back rooms where they'd have special screenings for certain games and things like that, and where you would interview people. It was a huge space. The Skylanders booth was even bigger than that, though. Like, the Skylanders booth was insanely big that Electronic Arts had, and Blizzard. So, I mean, all that stuff cost millions and millions and millions of dollars. Millions of dollars to set up, thousands of dollars to tear down. So, I mean, it made sense that you had your companies in California during, like, the rise of, the time of E3, because it would be too expensive for... You could probably go bankrupt if you lived in another state, and then you had to, like, lug all your equipment over there to set it up every year. And so it was just easier to be there. But now that that no longer is a thing, I mean, you're probably going to see a mass exodus of game developers going to places like Texas, probably Austin or Houston, probably places in Florida. I'm not too familiar with Florida names, so sorry. Atlanta, I hear a lot of indie developers are in Atlanta. There's still some in the East Coast, but I mean, property taxes in California, New York City, Boston, Chicago are through the roof, so it'd be easier for game developers to go someplace much cheaper. But E3 used to be $1 billion business. And also, I mean, like I said, this is really going to hurt the California economy, because you would have all these international travelers staying in hotels and eating food, and these fancy hotels and even regular hotels, like, they made boku bucks for a long time with all these different conventions and things like that. And now one of their biggest sources of revenue is gone like that. That's going to have a huge impact eventually.
Karateka is probably one of the best examples of that sort of accumulated skill that you have in a visceral sense, the visceral skill that you use in a game. Because there's not, if you think about it, you're moving from left to right, you're doing one encounter at a time, you're not loading out
exactly, Jake,
and like advancing the gun and adding mods to it or anything like that. It's just you and your skill set against a horde of enemies between you and Mariko. And you have to learn how to time each punch, each kick, and you anticipate things, and you do all that stuff. It brings it down to a level that's far more visceral than a lot of modern games do. And that's what I love about Karateka, because it is a skill-based game. It is something that is punishing at first, but once you understand the flow and how the AI interprets what your actions are and how you can interpret the AI's actions and defend against those, it's a really, really rewarding experience. And by adding lives to the game, it was a compromise that I wanted to make, because I think a lot of people will walk away from the game before they have the time to learn or invest the time to learn and how to actually play it.
So let's put this in perspective for you guys real quick. For 600 square feet of space at E3 would cost a company like an indie developer anywhere between $30,000 to $60,000 to build a booth, and that is just for 600 square feet. The larger the size of the booth, the more money it costs, and that's not like I'm trying to remember like how they continue to make like the prices last. Whereas to have a booth at PAX, it's about, especially in Boston area, it's around like $9,000 or $10,000, something like that. It's a little bit cheaper. When they first started PAX, it was around $1,000, and they've gone up in price since then. So this was a estimate of prices back at E3. This was 2018 is what Google has. It was $30,000 back 2018 for just 600 square feet. That's just for that amount though. Nah, stop it!
Probably one of the best examples.
I'm fighting. Ah, Karateka, go away!
Examples.
What?
Karateka is probably one of the
I
best
met a lot of really cool people at E3 though. That's I'm gonna miss it. Like it was like gamer Christmas.
Karateka is probably one of the best examples.
That's where I met all my industry contacts a long time ago, and how we got license agreements and met companies to work with and PR and all kinds of stuff. I met my my PR agent. I met at E3. Okay, shut up. I don't care about Karateka right now. I'm fighting this dude. Yeah. There we go. Oh yeah. Why is my dead body there?
The AI is literally like a watch. It's part of a bigger system. The AI is like the big hand on a watch. And so everything else that's going on in the game is factored into what the AI is doing and the way it's deciding things. The way that everything works is really dependent on everything else. It's literally a house of cards. So if you decide you want to change the speed in which the player runs, you're breaking the AI. If you want to change the speed in which you kick, you break the AI. It's just so perfectly tuned to what it's supposed to be that just changing anything in a minor way in the entire ecosystem of what Karateka is can affect the AI. So ultimately, if we try to run the game faster and we say the CPU runs faster, but the hardware draw retains its normal speed in a real Apple II, and we just hack that, the game breaks. The AI doesn't work as well. But if you have everything in lockstep and you speed it up, the whole game will just run faster and the AI will run exactly how it's supposed to be. But the minute you pull elements of that apart, it just
I've never met the people who made Karateka because, like, I never played this game. Like, this was an Apple game, Apple computer. I played a Kung Fu game, like I said, on NES called Kung Fu, which came out in 1985. Although I didn't play it until, like, the late 80s. Because, yeah.
When you encounter the bird again, that's right before you encounter AKUMA, the final boss. And that's where the copy protection, it's where the horrible copy protection would take you down, because you had now played through 90% of the game. And if it's a copy you're playing, that's when the bird's going to be like, nope, you're just going to die, and I'm going to kill you, and there's no way you're going to see AKUMA, and you just think you suck. But no, it's the bird was designed to do that. But that bird encounter is the final encounter with the bird, in which you have to correctly time all your kicks repeatedly. It's still hard. If it weren't copy protection, it's still one of the hardest things in the game, because you have to take this bird out and you think, oh, thank God I took this bird out. And then the next thing is AKUMA, who has more health than like the screen can display, and he's going to come out and kick your ass too. So basically, it is a horrible ending. I don't know what Jordan was thinking, but it's a horrible ending, but the bird just made it that much harder and that much more, I'd say, rewarding when you finally beat the game.
Oof!
When you encounter the
No!
bird right before you, when you encounter the bird again, that's right before you.
My gosh, dude, stop! Ah!
Again, that's right before you. When you encounter the bird again, that's right before you.
Jeez. Uh-oh. My gosh!
That's right before you. And if it's a copy you're playing,
Uh-oh. No!
Again, that's right before you.
No!
You encounter the bird again. That's right before you encounter AKUMA, the final boss.
Killed by the game. Yeah! It's not playing now. Whatever.
One of the ideas that Jordan had in his journal that I wish I would have read before I started creating the game was the idea that you could encounter an enemy that comes from the other side. When you kick down a door, he starts to approach you from the other side. Had I fundamentally thought about that at the very beginning, I would have created the structure of it and kind of built around that. But because I was trying to follow Jordan's original disassemblies of Karateka, I had not anticipated building that kind of support in. And now I'm kicking myself because I think that's a really great puzzle. But I think the ultimate thing that happens now is very similar to what happens in the original game. And I think this happens, I think it's a bit different on every platform, but I believe the Commodore 64, maybe the Atari 800, do this thing where you kick the final door down and no enemy arrives, you don't see anything, and you go through the door, and then Akuma's just right there in your face, and he starts beating you back. I think that serves almost the same purpose, but ultimately, would I have done what the journal said? Absolutely, because the goal of this was not only just to port this and find out all the challenges of porting it, but also to try to go through the challenges of the things that Jordan intended to do and try to incorporate all those things. And that's just one part where we missed it.
Okay.
One of the ideas that Jordan had in his journal that I wish I would have read before I started creating the game was the idea that you could encounter an enemy that comes from the other side. When you kick down a door, he starts to approach you from the other side. Had I fundamentally thought about that at the very beginning, I would have created the structure of it and kind of built around that. But because I was trying to follow Jordan's original disassemblies of Karateka, I had not anticipated building that kind of support in. And now I'm kicking myself because I think that's a really great puzzle.
Why is he walking like that? That's a karate stance.
So, like the original game, Akuma does regenerate his health a little bit faster, and he does pull back more. What I loved about that in the original game, and what I kind of...
This is a remake, Sammy. The original game is here.
The game, that's your player tactic. You're like, okay, I'm going to back off and kind of increase my health. And all the enemies, kind of, their health increases very slowly. I always thought that was amazing when you get to Akuma and you're like, what? His health regenerates faster, and he's backing off. He's doing what I did the whole game. So it's a really nice twist to the game that I appreciated, and I made sure I maintained that in this version.
This is a remake, but that is a karate stance. Or martial arts stance, how you see him walking like that. That's a real stance in martial arts. Although usually you encircle your opponent. You don't walk at them like straight like that. That's so you can maneuver around them and then, you know, strike. It's supposed to be like a circular thing, like you're surrounding each other. Is he coming out the door or what? He's not coming out. Why? There he is. Yeah, dude's health restores pretty quick.
So, like the original game, AKUMA does...
That's not fair. Dude's reach is like so insane. Okay, I got him now. He's toast. Oop. Gotta wait for him to come after me. Ha 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 ha!
So, like the original game, AKUMA does regenerate his health a little bit faster, and he does pull back more. What I loved about that in the original game, and what I kind of held on to here, is that the whole game, that's your player tactic. You're like, okay, I'm going to back off and kind of increase my health. And all the enemies, kind of their health increases very slowly. I always thought that was amazing when you get to AKUMA and you're like, what? His health regenerates faster, and he's backing off. He's doing what I did the whole game. So it's a really nice twist to the game that I appreciated, and I made sure I maintained that in this version.
Death by Chun-Li kicks.
I'd say one of the biggest controversies in games over the years, when you go back to this era and this period, there are a lot of them, but like one that stands out to a lot of people was the extremely unfair ending of Karateka. And what I mean by that is essentially you go into this room, you've been in combat stance, again, another Jordan staple. You're in combat stance during the whole game. You would not even think about standing up and running at this point because you've now beaten everybody. You've beaten AKUMA, you've beaten everybody. So why would you? It's not even in your, it's not even front of mind when you go into this room. So ultimately you're just like, I guess like any other game, I'm just gonna walk over and basically quote unquote collect like Mariko, because it's just like, that's what you do in games. But that's absolutely what you're not supposed to do. Again, he flips it over because what you need to do is stand up and run into her arms. And if you don't, she kicks your ass. And that's the end of the game. That's it. You got to start over. After going through all of that, fighting the eagle, fighting AKUMA, you go in combat stance to Mariko, and guess what? She's going to kill you. So that was something that was... I had to sit there and think really hard and soul search, but the reality is it was such an important moment in Karateka that to change that would be like changing the ending of Citizen Kane or anything else. You just can't touch that. You can't even put hints there. You can't even be like, you're going to have her sit there go like, no, like maybe stand up or anything like that, because that's what modern designers would try to do. No, let's really embrace what Jordan did and his design principles and keep it in there. And it's pretty funny because there's some people who've never played Karateka before, and their first time playing it is this remaster, and they get so angry with me as if I made the big mistake there or whatever. But it's like, once they find out that's just how the game was and that's just part of what it is, it's they still hate me. So finally, now at the end of all this, looking back at it and what we've done, I go back to the original question of why was this game so hard to port for so many teams back in the day? And I think we found the answer. Ultimately, the AI, super complex, challenging, nuanced, amazing, and very hard for somebody, especially back in the 80s, who was, for teams that were used to making something that was more state-based act-react kind of games. There were a lot of shooters at this time, so when Karateka came out, most games were still like either platformers like Donkey Kong, or they were shooters. And there was no cinematic games really at this time. And how do you make that a game? How do you make something that feels like a movie play like a game? That wasn't answered yet. And so a lot of these teams were used to making games where you're like a boat on waves shooting at enemies coming down, like Space Invaders and all these sorts of things that were just very simple physics, simple mechanics, things that were very textbook. And so I can imagine being a team seeing Karateka and just scratching their head thinking like, how do I do this? because without the source code, even when they're given the source code, looking at it is complicated. There were years of just optimizations being done to that, so following the logic was really challenging. So I think what happened was sort of what I was experiencing a bit of myself going through this, was that you basically throw it all away and say, I'm gonna do this like an arcade karate game where I have like punch is gonna be fast. There's no proximity detection. There's no complicated collision detection. There's no anticipation. It's just punch, punch, kick, kick, move. And that's what ended up happening. You look at some of the other versions, the handheld versions, the console versions, it just got really, really simplified. And so going through this, all those moments where I was like, all right, we're not going to do this. It's time to just delete this from the project. It's because of those moments where looking at what the original game had done and trying to mimic that or replicate it or port it became super challenging. And I think the answer then at the end of the day was that AI was everything about the game, and if you couldn't replicate it, it broke dramatically. And ultimately, this process, I wouldn't say we nailed it. I'd say we got pretty close. Probably further than some of the other teams in the past had done, but definitely really didn't dial it in as much as Jordan did on the original version. So as far as the thesis of can we port it, yes, with some caveats.
There you go. And the corpses of my brother clones there. And so his adventure ends. The evil AKUMA lies vanquished. The beautiful Mariko safe in your arms for the first time in memory. The village basks in the sunlight of peace. But beware, for the true Karateka, there is always a next time. If her name was Mariko, though, wouldn't she have, like, blue or black hair? Or brown? She looks like the princess in Dragon Slayer or something. Like, who had super, like, bleach blonde hair. I'm surprised I never knew about Karateka, though. But again, I didn't have Apple. My dad had a PC. And the games he played on PC was like Space Quest, Shadowgate. I'm trying to remember the old PC games in the 80s. I can't remember. And of course he would play the NES with me, like Super Mario, Ninja Turtles, things like that. It's me, Mariko. Come close to me, I'll kick you in the teeth. That was fun. Death Bounce. And they give you all these other games, too, to look at. That's really clever. So yeah, I never had an Apple. There was a 1995 version? Or does that say 85? 8-bit Atari. Ugh. Oh my gosh. I want to see what the 2600 looks like. Was this like an arcade game? Are we talking like old 26... Atop a craggy cliff, guarded by an army of fierce warriors, stands the fortress of the evil warlord AKUMA. Deep in the darkest dungeon of the castle, AKUMA gloats over his lovely captive, the Princess Mariko. You are one trained in the way of karate, a karateka. Alone and unarmed, you must defeat AKUMA and rescue the beautiful princess. Blech. Put fear and self-concern behind you. Focus your will on your objectives. Accepting death as a possibility. This is the way. This is the way. Like, you know, The Mandalorian. Did a great job, thank you. Oh wow, look what they were able to do with the Atari. This isn't the 2600, what is this? She falls down in despair. The remake is actually pretty cool. 5200? Oh, the frames. Nah. Yeah, the remake is really good. Like, this is not aged very well. Ah! It's like playing Arkham Knight on Switch. It's so slow. Yeah. Ah! The end. Alright, so that's what the Atari looks like. I want to see what the other one... Okay. So that was 1985. And this is a remake. See, remastered. Let's go with the Commodore 64. Death. 1984, 1985. This is on the Commodore 64. How many people had a Commodore 64? I did not. Whoops. Runs a little bit better than the Atari, but not by much. Slow motion. Stop. Kick. What? It'd be cool if we could beat one guy at least. Yeah. Oof. Yeah, yeah. They made it pretty cinematic back then, too. It's kind of impressive. Whoop. I wonder if Kung Fu on NES was inspired by this game, because this came out before Kung Fu. This came out in 84. Kung Fu was 85. Buh! Okay. That's kind of funny. Alright, I want to see the original Apple. This is the guy who created Prince of Persia, I believe. The Prince of Persia game. 1984. Apple PC 2. Or Apple 2. This looks like it runs a little faster. It adds sound effects. Ow. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to play the whole thing like this, but it's interesting. Kick. So that's really cool that they actually have the original. They have the original versions of the game, and then they have the remake. And the remake's actually pretty good. The remake looks like it could have been on the Super Nintendo. More or less. I'm surprised they didn't make this game for the Super Nintendo. Like, later on. Alright, there we go. So that's pretty much gonna do that. That's really interesting. And you get other versions of the game too. You have the prototype. That's really interesting. Drawing from life. So they have documentaries that you can listen to. The theme of the game. This is a brilliant remake, actually. Are you prepared for the fight of your life? A design and story concept for a sequel that was ultimately never produced. Aw, that's too bad. So there you go, people. That is tonight's Ultimate. Thank you very much, Yu-Gi-Oh, for sponsoring the stream. I hope you enjoyed it. And tomorrow we've got the brand new Pokemon DLC, which will be happening at 8 o'clock. So we'll be starting ours around 8:30. Hopefully I can download the game now. Or update my Pokemon software, or whatever it is. So you got 2 Arkham Knight episodes tomorrow. Pokemon, and then I think there is an Ultimate tomorrow night as well. Not sure. But you guys have a fantastic night. Thanks so much for hanging out. And I will see you guys tomorrow with more Arkham Knight. That runs just as fast as the old retro versions of this game. I kid you not. Take care, everybody. Have a fantastic one. Thanks for the super chat from Clayton. And I will see you guys tomorrow. God bless. Happy gaming. Have a great night.